In this week's episode of Let's Talk About It, we are going to explore how can Christians interact with people who have no interest in talking about faith. And then in our relationship segment, we're going to explore the famed introvert versus extrovert conversation. So you're here, you've joined us. Now let's talk about it.
Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Let's Talk About It podcast. I'm Malcolm Morgan.
And I'm Micah Morgan.
And we're so happy to have you with us today.
Yes, so happy.
So happy. Micah, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I've got something weird going on with my eye. It itches, but I think that's
something that the people can hear on the podcast.
I think so. Yes. I thought my eyelashes were pretty loud just now, but other than that, I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing okay. You know, we're getting closer to the election and things are ramping up. You know,
that is a way to
describe it. And so that makes, especially on social media, things are very tense and interesting and so many things. I'm so glad we talked about social media etiquette in our first episode.
So if you would like some tips on social media etiquette, you know, you may need them or not. We would be happy to offer those if you go back and listen to episode 1.
Absolutely. All right. So our first segment today, how to interact with people who are not interested in talking faith
at all.
This is really going to come to the core of evangelicalism right here, of us, the belief that we must take Jesus everywhere we go, and if they don't want it, we give it to them anyway. They don't even know that they need it. Which is a very combative way to look at evangelism in general.
It is. But I always come back to, you know, I don't think any Christian of the evangelical persuasion wakes up in the morning and they say, oh, you know, I really want to beat someone over the head with the gospel. Like I yearn for that moment where someone decides never to talk to me again because I've been abrasive and I've been, you know, I haven't read the room and I haven't taken, you know, no one wakes up and says that. I think people genuinely want to spread the gospel, want to spread the good news of who Jesus is and what he has done, because they love Jesus and they believe that the good news is for everyone and that everyone needs that news, you know? And so I always like to begin this conversation there, because I imagine that there's someone listening to us who really does value the work of evangelizing, of sharing the good news, and that it's important to them. And maybe they have noticed people who have kind of turned away from them or, you know, gotten the cold shoulder and they're not responding to their text messages. And they may be trying to figure out, well, you know, what am I doing wrong? Am I doing something wrong? So I really just want to kind of contextualize this conversation that way first. Yeah. But there are some implications that our question throws out there from the beginning. We are implying that we think we should interact with people who have no desire to talk about faith. And we also are implying that there are people out there who just don't care. They don't, you know, they identify as non-spiritual or they've been really wounded by people of faith in the past and they've decided, nope, I'm done. And so these two implications, I think we just want to throw those out there. We are working with some assumptions from jump, you know. But what do you think, Malcolm?
Well, we've had this conversation in several different forms, whether in small group studies, Bible studies, other things. The first thing that I want to talk about is relationship, and that the best evangelism, correction, anything that you do, it's better done in relationship than done outside of that.
What do you mean by that?
So, you know, I think of examples of where I've been in churches and things where adults are like, why can't I get the kids to do what I want them to do? They just don't listen to me. Well, they don't really know you.
Yeah, you're a stranger.
They don't know your heart. You're just a person yelling at them that they need to pull up their pants. And any human person is going to get defensive about that.
Right, because I don't know you.
Why are you yelling at me? I don't understand.
Or as many young people would put it, you ain't my mama. So.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important, in any conversation like this, it's going to be really hard to have a conversation about faith with anyone that you don't have a relationship with. Now, there are instances where you walk up to somebody in the coffee shop and the conversation just starts, and God bless you that have had those conversations, but it doesn't usually work that way in real life. What happens is you meet a person, and over time you develop a relationship with that person, and then they feel comfortable enough to talk to you, to talk about their faith. I have a friend of mine who I met at a job that I no longer have. And I did not go in there thinking I'm going to share my faith with this person, but we just talked about life. Over time, he felt comfortable enough to tell me about his life. I told him about my life, the things that I do outside of work, which include being involved in church, being involved in ministry. And that opened up a door for a conversation, but I didn't go into it saying, I'm about to save this dude today.
Yikes.
But we had that conversation, and then out of that, he's visited church. He was a part of our small group, and is a person I still check in with from time to time as well to see how he's doing. But it all started with him understanding my heart,
right,
and knowing that I'm not here to try to change you. I'm here to just have an open conversation with you about anything, and if it leads to faith, it leads to faith. And once we get there, then I want to be as much of a resource to that person as possible.
Yeah.
But it helps when that person doesn't feel like, oh, you're just preaching at me.
Right. Or that you're trying to get a notch on your belt,
Yes.
And so
God got another one.
Right. And no one I don't think very many people want to feel that way. That I'm just some trophy that you can talk about next time you go to church because I said the prayer of salvation with you. That's not a good feeling, and it doesn't feel genuine to a lot of people. So I think when we talk about evangelism being done most fruitfully in relationship, some people are going to listen to us and be like, okay, well, how do you explain what was happening in the Billy Graham era, right? Where you've got droves of people arriving to stadiums to get saved. And to that, I would say that was a very different time.
It was.
Very different. I think since then, we have become much more of a postmodern, there are multiple truths that can be true kind of a civilization. And so it's going to be very difficult nowadays for you to have no relationship with someone, to pick up a microphone in the middle of a large room and share the gospel with them or yell the gospel at them, no matter how persuasive and eloquently shared, and have that person say, oh, you know what? I do want to change my life. I do accept this truth as a truth above all truths, even though I live on social media and that's just not how the world works anymore, So I do want to acknowledge that there was a time, there really was a time where people could grab a bullhorn and go stand on the corner and get a handful of people saved. I don't think we're in that time anymore. And we need to acknowledge that and change our tune, and I think a lot of people are. And it is beautiful when we see people with different faith backgrounds able to share friendship with a Christian and be developing that relationship to the point where they do begin to kind of get their hearts pricked and kind of say, oh, maybe this relationship with Jesus and joining in the work of restoring creation alongside of Jesus through the Spirit, maybe I do want to, join into that.
Yeah. There's a lot of sharing our faith that has to do not with the words that we say, but in the life that we model.
Absolutely.
We want people to be able to look at us and say, they have something that I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I need to know more. I need to understand, where does that come from? And I think one of the things that we've failed to do as Christians is a lot of the time is to live a life that reflects that. it reflects something else that's not the fruits of the Spirit that we see in the Gospels. It's something else. But if we lived a life that was long suffering, if we showed these things in our daily walk and our daily conversations, I think we wouldn't have to be so hard pressed. I got it. Jesus is the way.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think of the quote, essentially, I'm going to horribly paraphrase and butcher this quote. So whoever said it, sorry. The best sermons are done without words. There's a place for those outward expressions, but there's also space for, let me live this life.
Let me show you.
Let me show you what it's like to be a peacemaker.
Yeah.
Let me show you what it's like to stand up for justice. Let me show you what it's like to have peace in the middle of the storm. I don't have to just say it.
And no one can see that if they don't share a genuine relationship with you that's being cultivated across time. And so that's the conversation about, maybe cross-faith relationships, right? But it is a little bit different when you've got a person who is just like, yep, I've already decided I don't want anything to do with, your God. I don't, I don't care. And so to answer the question, how do we interact? We interact as people who follow, you know what I mean? Like,
not like a raving lunatic arguing with them all the time.
I think it's a very straightforward answer. Like you love them, you respect them. I think,
and it's not the kind of like passive aggressive where you're just constantly showing pity on people,
right?
For whether it's a lifestyle choice, whether it's another faith, but like, oh, well, I don't agree with you, but good luck. Like that whole like
the condescending.
It's like that's not love.
It's not.
That's not love.
I think love honors someone's choice, and depending on what side of the fence you are on, the Calvinist versus. I was
gonna say, watch the line that you're going on.
But we have to talk about it eventually.
So we're not going to do a full-blown Calvinist or Arminian
podcast, but the line does exist, and people have different beliefs based upon whether you have a choice in being in relationship with God. But what we're saying is loving someone as human being to human being, that you honor someone's choice. And I think the other thing that's important when you're interacting with people who have outwardly said no is to approach the relationship with some humility and understanding that you really don't know what's going on in their heart.
Yeah.
They may have outwardly said no, but there might be something going on in what their thoughts sound like, what their passions sound like, their preferences, that is beginning to lean toward a life of faith, and they may not even realize it.
Yeah.
And so I think having that kind of humility where you're like, okay, I honor the fact that you said no. I'm going to respect you. I'm going to behave toward you as someone who wants your best interest, but will not force what I think your best interest is on you. But I'm also going to acknowledge that there could be something going on in you that neither of us understand. And that's the part of the spiritual element of our faith that it's important to keep alive. That you really don't know.
We're not responsible for the results. We are not doing the work. I know it feels like you're doing work where you're evangelizing to somebody, but the Holy Spirit is doing the work.
Exactly.
And that work may happen in that conversation. It may happen 4 conversations from now. It may happen to this person completely independent of you 10 years
down the line.
But the Holy Spirit does the work of the heart.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
We can't.
We cannot. No matter how many debates we have, no matter how many times we'll yell at somebody that they're
Coffee
wrong,
dates.
no matter how many times we condemn somebody's behavior, the work of the heart can only be done by the Holy Spirit. And then it's up to that person how they respond to that.
But what we do know is we get far less fruitful results with the constant pushing and the constant reminding and convicting. It's just, it's rare for someone to be like, you know what? that last time that you embarrassed me in front of people on social media about how I'm not a Christian yet, that's it. That was the turning point for me. Please let me know when the first church service is. Like that, it just does not happen. And so I think with those things in mind, just the understanding that the most fruitful evangelism happens in relationship, and that secondly, we really don't know what's going on in someone's heart. And so to assume that because someone has said no, that we should change the way we honor them and change how kind we are to them or how present we are in their lives. It really assumes that we know more than we can. And so I think acting with humility is really important in these relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great button on that topic. Once again, it's one of those things we could talk about for so much longer.
Yeah.
But we're not going to. In the next segment, we're going to talk about relationships. And it is the vaunted extroverts versus introverts. And I would like to add ambiverts into this conversation.
Ambiverts.
You want to talk about introverts don't get any love. Ambiverts get no love.
They don't.
It's just everybody's like, pick a side. You don't get to be in between.
So I think the first question we need to ask is, what even is an introvert or an extrovert?
And if you think that I'm going to answer that, I'm not. You are the mental health professional that is going to answer that in a much better way than I ever could.
It's a difficult question to answer. What I will say is it is not someone being rude versus being personable. Introverts are not by default rude. Extroverts are not by default always personable. It's not just about how shy you are versus how talkative you are. Introversion and extroversion is really about how you tend to process social energy. So are you someone who, after you've exerted a lot of social energy in a gathering of people, or maybe a long, several hour long interaction with one person, are you someone who feels energized after that? Or do you feel more drained? If you feel more drained, you're probably more on the introverted side of the spectrum. If you feel recharged, you're probably on the more extroverted side of the spectrum. And so secondly, the answer to this question is it is on a spectrum. You're not going to be 100% extroverted probably and 0% introverted. You're probably going to be somewhere along that line. And ambivert is right in the middle. Ambivert is someone who's around 50% in terms of how they process social energy. So I love to start the conversation off that way because a lot of times people just get put in these rude versus talkative kind of boxes. And I don't think it does. I don't think it does justice to the conversation if we do it that way.
And then let's talk about where we are on the continuum.
So I think you would have answered this question differently before the pandemic. What do you think?
I think we had come to a realization about it later before that, but the pandemic has definitely crystallized and solidified that change.
So what do you think?
I still hold to the fact that I am the ambivert.
Oh, goodness.
Now, there are moments where I can get pulled more into introversion, especially when I'm with you.
Talk more about that if you don't mind.
What do you mean talk more about that?
But it's because
that's what I just said.
I just said it. I just talked about it. But no, I think that's a novel idea. I think people think that their introversion is like the same in every setting. And so I think that's a good point that you made, is it can change.
Yeah. So I guess I will out my wife. She is an introvert.
Oh, all the way.
Yeah. What did the comedian say? A violent introvert.
Oh, what is her name? Aparna, I think is her name.
Oh my gosh.
She is.
When she said that,
hilarious. She said that she's
either
violently introverted or aggressively. And I was like, wow, I think that captures my internal experience.
So my wife is very much introvert, and it took a long time for me to learn that and what that meant. Yikes. I just thought my wife was weird. I'll be honest. I just thought she was weird, and then I started to understand. Oh, my wife is introverted, and it doesn't mean that she doesn't like people. it's that it is a draining experience when she has to spend a lot of social energy. And so for me, when I want to be with her or when I'm with her, it'll pull me more into my introversion of let's just stay at home and watch a movie and like not go out. But then there's like during this pandemic, I've noticed parts of me that are like literally withering and dying because like I want to hang out with my family and just like sit and talk and just have a good time. I want to like be around a group of people. I want to go on a vacation somewhere and just be around people, even if I'm not talking to, like, just to be around in the mix a little bit.
And y'all, bless Malcolm's heart. I will forever release him into into the environment. Please go spend as much time as you want with whomever.
But she doesn't understand that. I want to spend that time with her.
And see,
quality time is also one of my love languages, guys.
Oh, so we have to talk about that.
Wait, that's a different podcast.
That's a whole different
segment. And we might need to bring in some like guests to moderate.
Yes. I think we can have the conversation in a civil way.
We can, but it would be fun to have do it with another couple. That would be fun. Yes.
Jot that down. So I have a very introverted experience. I don't know where I would put myself in. I don't think I'm 100%.
You've already said that that doesn't exist.
I know. I'm sitting here trying to qualify.
You've already made that disclaimer.
I think I'm just feeling defensive. Let me check my own emotions.
Okay.
But it's true.
It's okay.
I have, because of how easily I get drained socially. And I appreciate that you brought up the fact that it's not that I don't love people. I mean, I'm a therapist, so I would hope that I like people.
That would be
It'd be a very interesting. But I love people. One of my favorite things is facilitating group therapy and seeing people honor one another and facilitate each other's change and experience joy together. Like, oh, I love those moments so much, but I don't have a very large tank to be present in those moments. And I think whereas you were sad to figure out that I was an introvert, I was also sad because growing up, I experienced that draining feeling as a kind of shameful thing because I was torn between, wow, like I love seeing people love each other well and being involved in that, but I feel so tired afterward. Like I would just be in my room, just sleep after church. And it wasn't a sleep that was like, oh, I just had, some food in the basement of the church and I'm in a food coma. It was like, no, I'm like socially and emotionally exhausted. Yeah. And then I would be irritable if I didn't get rest afterward. So it really is important to frame this conversation as a physical thing too. Yeah. Like introverts, their heart rate might change depending on the social setting. They may feel more anxious because it's just a lot of social energy to take in. It's not all in their head, so to speak. It's not all in our head where we're like, man, I don't like people. It's a physically draining experience. Yeah. So would you like to talk about what that recharge feels like for you sometimes? Because I don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, I like to use the word omnivert. I know it's not real, but omnivert sounds so much more epic than ambivert. Ambivert sounds like, I don't know, like you eat vegetables. I don't know. Omnivert just sounds like, yes.
It sounds Jurassic Park.
All verts. So like the introverted part of me is completely content with curling up and watching a documentary with you and being perfectly fine. And there's moments where I need that. I need that moment to recharge. But there's other moments where I do feel I get a burst of energy being, for example, around my brother-in-law and my sister and her two kids. Like I'll leave that. And I think when I first noticed the difference in our extrovert and introvert continuum was after that I'd be like, man, that was really good, and I'd be like, how you doing? And you just look like you just want to go to sleep like immediately. And it's not any reflection on how good or bad the time was.
No, I
that
loved
was
it.
just all of the social energy that you have,
That
and
was
that
it.
is it. You don't even have enough to answer that question. You're looking at me like it's time to go to bed, and I'm like, it's 4. What are you talking about? Like, even after a hard day, in the right context, if I'm with the right group of people, that's like a great way for me to like decompress. It's just have fun with some people. And then other times Michael's like, I ain't got it.
Go have fun.
It's gonna be me and you. That's it. me, you, and this Papa John's pizza. That's it. So like initially when we got married, I think I believed that I was extrovert, and which. Yeah, the dynamics of our relationship are so interesting because Micah can make me look like an extrovert sometimes.
Oh, the contrast is real.
And if we're being honest, people would assume that I'm the nice one of the couple, and I'm not. I am not the nice one. Micah is the nice one.
There's some disagreement about that.
Okay, whatever. So it's like she makes me look like the brightest and happiest person, but we have a friend of ours who's like the extrovert of all extroverts. Like there's no
introversion.
doubting, none at all.
And it's like to see this person.
We're trying not to out them.
Yeah. But to see this person interact with people, it's really beautiful because this person has this endless well. And I envy it a bit because there's like, it never runs dry. And so I think what we can't ignore is that the world needs both, you know? And I think...
Could you imagine if everyone was either introvert, like if everybody in the world was First, let's start with extroverts. If everybody in the world was extrovert, it would be a much louder place for one.
Well, yes, maybe.
You wouldn't be
There's
able to...
some quiet extroverts.
Like, could you imagine a New York subway with everybody being an extrovert and just trying to get their social recharge on the subway?
Yikes. It would be very energized.
Could you imagine? And then could you imagine the world of all introverts where everybody is looking at each other like, please don't, everybody's looking at each other like, please don't talk to me right now. I need a minute.
However, there would be a mutual understanding and no one would be overwhelmed. So
no, they'd be overwhelmed with anxiety thinking about, oh my gosh, please somebody sit down and talk to me.
We could really unpack this though, because are these scenarios where everyone knows that everyone is?
That's the thing. They don't.
They don't.
It only works if they don't.
If they don't, that's true. That's true. Yeah. So those two worlds. Yeah. No, it's not supposed to be that way. And as an introvert, I certainly know that because honestly, like, truth be told, when we are in a social setting together, I think we really begin to do this dance where we we have this interdependent kind of arrangement going where I'll kind of step back for a little bit and allow you to get that charge of social energy by interacting with several people at once, which I think is a beautiful feat that I cannot do for long. And as I'm quietly recharging in the corner, then, I'll tap myself in and you can go get something to drink and then I'll, interact with people in your place. And so it can be a very team oriented experience.
Go team. So what would you say is the hardest part about being married to an ambivert?
The hardest part?
I can change the question. What is do you have a moment where you realized that we are not the same when it comes to this continuum?
Ooh, I think that question's harder than the first one.
Okay.
I don't have a definitive, like, this was the first moment I knew, but I will say when you and I were leading our small group, I noticed that you would have, like, even after you had a hard day at work and we had a 2.5-hour small group meeting, you still had something left. And I was like already irritable and done just 5 minutes after the last person left. And so I would even say that that's when you and I began to notice, because I think you said earlier that it was pre-pandemic that we started to notice. And I would say that it was that like era of our lives, of our marriage, where we were like, oh, we have very different social tanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about you? Do you have one of those moments?
I don't know if it's fair to like talk, but I guess it's a safe space.
It's
a safe space.
What would be an unsafe space? Are we going to hear like a commotion in the background?
I don't know.
This is a safe space.
Okay. You guys.
I'm going under the bus, y'all. This is what's about to happen.
No, I think I realized it during like interactions with my family. And I think it was at first I took it like personally, like, oh my gosh, my wife hates my family. Like, I can't believe I've married a person who hates my family. But when I came to understand more about what it really means to be an introvert, that it's not about, oh, Micah's being rude. Like, I can't believe she came up in my parents' houses. No, like, that takes a tremendous amount of emotional energy. If you aren't recharged by it, especially, that is another level of drain.
And y'all, Malcolm's family is beautiful. You know, one of my favorite things is sitting back and just watching the interplay of all the personalities. But I think there's definitely a predominant like extroversion versus I think there might be really just one person I can think of that's more introverted.
I kind of want to ask who. So it's people that know my family. So
I think mom is a bit more introverted.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And everyone else is definitely on the more extroverted side.
Well, here's the secret. I think both of my parents are introverted.
Really?
Yeah, I think my dad is actually more introverted than my mom. Yeah.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Huh.
I'm sure I'm going to get a text message about this from one or both of my parents. Probably from my sister telling me.
They might disagree.
They will probably absolutely disagree because we just
because they both like you can see how mom and dad love people. They love people, but I would say that dad definitely has less energy afterward.
Yeah.
But even comparatively speaking, I think I'm further on the introverted scale.
Yes, you are. Yeah,
compared to everyone. And so there are moments where I'll kind of fall back and just observe and enjoy it.
Honestly, when I first started realizing that, that's when I was like, okay, I see what's happening now. Like, and it used to annoy me because I'd be like, be a part, be in the mix.
I am.
But that takes emotional energy. It's like, it takes energy to do that. And if you're in a situation where, you know, social interaction is draining, then it's tough to summon up the energy from your drained place to be on for that entire time. So
now family vacations on the second day, I'm in it because I had a good night's sleep. You know what I'm saying?
Do we really sleep well on family vacations though?
Most of the time.
Because we end up sleeping on a couch or some roll-out bed. Because I don't know. I don't know why.
Because it's a large family for one. So
it's relatively large family.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was tough finding, like, not taking that personally.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, my wife hates me, hates my family. Like, it's not a personal thing, and it's not even really something that you could super control. So where do you think? Okay, so let's go to your mom. Where do you think your mom falls on the spectrum? Since we started talking about families a little bit.
My mom is.
I think I know the answer to this, but
much more extroverted than introverted.
She absolutely is.
She has this beautiful way of connecting with and I've always noticed it. Even when I was younger, she could connect with several people at the same time and have these genuine, like, present interactions with them.
Yeah.
And be fine for hours on end. And I'm like, Ma, please, I'm in the car.
I'm exhausted just thinking about some of the times we've gone to your mom's house and we get there and the house is just full of people. And you're just like,
oh my goodness.
Okay, how long is this going to be going on?
The whole night.
Then it becomes 11 o'clock and then 12 o'clock and you're like, and no one's leaving. Like, no one's losing steam.
And
like,
that's just the space that she creates. It's beautiful.
Incredible. It's incredible. Even as a person who has some extrovert tendencies, that is incredible.
It is. It's a superpower.
Like, that's one thing that I don't think I can get you to like fully embrace. Is like entertaining people in our home.
I think
for long periods of time.
That is
a dinner is one thing. Like, watching a movie is one thing.
But
having a 5 to 6 to 7 hour party at the end of a long work week.
Those are fighting words.
But your mom like that's like
that's her thing.
I know she was struggling in quarantine. Like, she can't see her people. She can't go out. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah. But I think what I've noticed is when we do entertain, there is, again, that team oriented, like, I'm gonna wipe everything down. I'm gonna set the stage, light some candles. I'll cook. I'm gonna make sure it's hospitable, and I got you for them first like 45 minutes, maybe 47. Then you will find me somewhere on the 48th minute. You will absolutely see me cleaning something in a corner, and that is because I'm recharging. And what I love is that the people who spend a lot of time with us, they understand that. And they don't take it personal, and it gives me so much room to just be myself and not feel shame. And I'm so grateful for that, because this is it's an extroverted world, and so us more introverted people, we get called things and whatnot. I'm not gonna take it personal or whatnot, but it is good to have people in your corner who honor your introversion.
It is. Or your ambiversion.
Or omniversion. Or
omniversion.
Whatever
you feel like. So yeah, once again, we could talk about this for a really long time. But the conversation doesn't have to stop here.
It doesn't.
Go to social media, continue this conversation, use the hashtag @TalkAboutItPodcast. You can also pull us into the conversation. We're on Twitter. I am @Malcolm M Music.
And I am @Spoken Worship.
Yes, remember what your Twitter handle is.
I forgot my Twitter handle.
And we'd love to be a part of this conversation with you, and love to see you continuing this with your friends, your family, your coworkers, that weird neighbor that doesn't really talk to you. Do it all. Do it up.
Go for it.
Find the introvert in your life and pull them into this conversation.
Oh, nice. What if the introvert doesn't want to talk?
Well, I don't know. What are you
gonna say? I don't know.
It's best done in a relationship. So talk about it.
There we go. Full circle. Good comedic relief. So y'all, this has been a wonderful time. We thank you so much for joining us on this conversation about introversion versus extroversion and how to interact with people who have no interest in talking about faith.
None.
So we invite you to continue the conversation, and let's keep talking about it.